So this show doesn't have an opening. This is just the way I normally do it. But we kind of normally are having a conversation before I record, so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, I guess in my mind, right, this movie is not something that I had ever seen before. Obviously, it's an important movie, I think we would all agree. But to open this podcast, could a movie like this be made today the way that this movie was made then? Or do you think it would cause a stir?
What part would cause a stir?
I don't know. I mean, it kind of caused a stir then, didn't it? In 80, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I think
it caused a different stir now, maybe?
I think you can make a line from 9 to 5 to Bridesmaids. Like, you have to pinball a little bit to get there. But I think that may have been probably the closest thing to kind of what this movie was, except for the fact that Bridesmaids no longer cares about making a movie about something. Like, this movie was trying to make Jane Fonda wanted to make a movie about the 9 to 5 movement, which was a labor movement, and literally said, I want to make a movie about the 9 to 5 movement. And she was Jane Fonda, so she got to kind of do whatever she wanted. And then she got to put, Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton into it.
Yeah. So on this episode of the Kulturecast, I am joined by the hosts of 80s TV Ladies, which is a podcast that you can find on the Weirding Way Media Network. I'm going to let them introduce the show that they have. But I am joined by Susan Lambert and Sharon Johnson.
Thrilled to be here with you, Chris.
So
thanks for having us.
Sharon, tell me a little bit about 80s TV Ladies, because a lot of the time Susan talks about it, or Susan's emissary, Richard Haddam, talks about it. Every time Richard comes on, he's like, and my wife's show. So Susan, what if my listeners have never listened to y'all's show, which is a shame if they haven't, what could they expect to hear if they go and listen to 80s TV Ladies?
We're a podcast looking at female-driven TV shows in the 1980s. We both, it was a formative time, I think, in both our lives as well. And we're looking back at some of those TV shows to see how they shaped us, as well as how they shape us now, perhaps. And also, they're just shows that are fun and really entertaining. And thus far, with the ones that we've been going back and watching and covering, have held up surprisingly well. I wasn't sure what to expect when we first went back to do a little bit of a rewatch, but I was very pleasantly surprised. So that's what the show's about.
So starting with Sharon and then you, Susan, tell my audience a little bit about y'all's backgrounds, kind of where you guys come from professionally, and then obviously that kind of informed the show a little bit. But since the first time I've actually ever spoken with Sharon, and Susan and I have talked extensively about the show, what is both of y'all's backgrounds?
My background is a little bit more eclectic, I think, than Susan's is, in that after graduating from college with a business degree, I worked in banking for about 10 years, mostly in HR. Decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and thought I would see if I could find some place within the entertainment industry that I might find to be to work for me. After a few years, I ended up for a while working at captioning company as a captioning editor. I worked at a small production company that made TV movies. This was in the 90s. Before then, landing a position as an executive assistant at the Walt Disney Company, where I worked for several senior executives over the time that I was there. So I've always been, as long as I can remember, an avid TV watcher. And I very fondly remember the time with 3 networks when I would basically know what was on every night during every time slot. It was impossible to watch it all, but it was not impossible, at least for me, to know what was on. That, for better or worse, is no longer the case. But nevertheless, I still try to watch and consume as much TV as I can, as well as movies as well. I'm a big movie fan as well.
What about you, Susan? Like we said, we've talked a lot, but you're also muted, by the way. So before you go, I was like, before you go, be careful. Yeah, no, we've talked before, obviously a lot, but I've never had you on the show. So, but I've had Richard on. Richard has been here a lot. So,
and for those that don't know, Richard is my husband, Richard Haddam. I first want to say thank you for having us on the show, but also thank you because you were one of the first people I called because Rich was coming onto your show and I was listening to your show and Mike White's show, The Projection Booth and the Kulturecast. And so when I wanted to do a podcast, I was like, do you think Chris and Mike will talk to me? And you did. And you guys were very helpful and gave me some good advice to get started. And then we ended up sort of working closer together by me joining the Weirding Way Media network, which is really exciting. It was really helpful to us. And so I'm really grateful to you. So thank you.
Oh, wow. I was not expecting to hear so many spoken about so effusively. I appreciate it. I mean, if you have all this experience, why not put it to good use to work with other people who want to create their own shows and stuff like that? I mean, it's a shame to know what you're doing and not be able to help other people who want to do the same thing. It's not that hard, but it is. So don't anybody else do a podcast, please. It's hard to do it right. Y'all would agree, I'm sure. It's hard to do it right.
It is a lot of work. It's fun. And I think Sharon and I are both like a little surprised at actually how much fun we're having doing it, that it hasn't gotten like too, I mean, certainly there are moments when like doing 3 weeks in a row or something or 2 interviews back to back that we get a little like tired and bleary eyed and tongue tied, but it's really fun. I'm really looking forward to our next season, which we're already planning, and finishing our first season. It's just been really exciting. But that's not what you asked me. You asked me where I'm from and what I do and how I got here.
But I do like the hustle of self-promotion. I'm not going to complain.
You got to shake the trees.
Exactly.
I grew up in Georgia, outside of Atlanta, Decatur, Georgia. And I also was very informed by movies and television, and started in high school getting really interested in how movies and television were made, and that became something I got very, very interested in doing, oddly enough. I'm very much a behind the scenes gal for theater and music and band, and then a friend of mine, Eddie Pittman, who's now works in animation now. He worked on Phineas and Ferb and several other Dan Povenmire shows and Disney shows. But at the time, he was just this kid making Super 8 films, and he was like, "Do you want to come help me?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And so I got to make Super 8 movies with Eddie Pittman, and then I decided to go to film school. So I came out to California, to USC, University of Southern California, to go to film school, and did my got my undergraduate degree. Was out doing camera work for about a year and a half because that's what I was getting hired doing. And then I was like, I really want to concentrate on writing and directing. So I went back to grad school and got my graduate degree from USC and did a lot of writing in the Hollywood world, both indie and some studio. Like actually I was just reminded the other day that my first paid writing gig was for Dan Curtis Productions, who was the producer of Dark Shadows with Kate Jackson. This was past that time. He was sort of developing TV movies, and I wrote a TV movie script, but it did not go forward, but it was my first paid job, and it was really neat. And he took me seriously as a young writer, and that was really exciting. Anyway, and then I just sort of bounced around doing a lot of indie work, really tended to move towards the edges of things rather than like, I want to go, as much as I love studio stuff, in some ways I wish that I had grown up in the streaming era and the era of really easy accessibility to creating indie content, which we're in now, because I sort of, it took a long time for me to realize that what I wanted was a little bit off the norm. And so I just like I get to now make kind of whatever I want. So I develop a lot of theater projects. I write a lot of theater projects. And I also develop now podcasts and some movies and TV. That's me, I think.
And I guess the last question before we get to the movie is, how did y'all meet?
So we met through a mutual friend. I met Brittany in line for many hours to watch the first showing of the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy. And she was just about to start film school. We kept in touch. And at some point, I met Susan through Brittany, and we've known each other ever since. Sadly, Brittany passed away about 20 years ago, but Susan and I have kept in touch.
Yeah, it makes me really I just am so nostalgic and fond and happy and sad that we met through Brittany, my friend Brittany Taylor, who I met a little bit later when we were both at film school together, and we became sort of pretty much best friends at film school. And then I, through Brittany, met Sharon. And so it is really kind of amazing that we've known each other for a long, long time and been friends a long, long time. And, and it was it's hard to lose a friend pretty young. So it's weirdly kind of bonding in a way.
Sure.
So, but there's a lot of emotions.
Frankly.
It's bittersweet, right? But we were, there's no one that knows more television than Sharon. Sharon is always watching, and now podcasts. And then, so when I was like, I want to do this crazy podcast. Who would sit down and talk television with me? I knew that Sharon both listened to a lot of podcasts and just knew way more television than even I knew. And so I was like, hey, that would be really fun. And so it was an inspired moment, and it's been great fun.
Seems to be fun. And you guys are getting pretty good traction so far, which is good. But I think the space is in need of more unique voices than just a bunch of, what's the term? Middle-aged white guys. Because that's what a lot of podcasting is. And it's just like anything else. And I think I love that there are more voices. And I love that people are coming up with great show ideas every day, and they're executing on them successfully too, like y'all's show. So, but speaking of old white men that need to be taken down, let's talk about Colin Higgins's 1980 classic, 9 to 5.
20th Century Fox presents a tribute to anyone who has ever been overworked, underpaid, and pushed to the edge by an ungrateful boss. They arrive promptly at 9, because if they're not on time, they know they'll get the sack. But before they begin the daily grind, the boss takes his cup black. They remember each date, make sure he's not late, and keep everything organized. They reserve tables for brunch or a 3-martini lunch while they dine on burgers and fries.
This road.
They listen to all his problems. They do their best to please. And even if they run the show, he gets paid for their ideas.
Great work.
And so long as he's alive, from 9 to 5, they'll take it all they can.
This road, come in here.
But what will go on when the light finally dawns that it's time to get back at that man?
This road.
Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton. 9 to 5.
So it is directed by Colin Higgins, and it stars Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton, along with some other people. We'll talk about them. But the three of them are the most important, and the three of them play businesswomen at a consolidated company where Dabney Coleman is just being an asshole and riding them all consistently for differing reasons. Dolly Parton is his secretary, and he's always trying to have sex with her. Lily Tomlin, he's always just talking down to. And Jane Fonda, not even sure he cares about her character, because she's not given a lot to do with him, thankfully, because of the amount of time that Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton are hassled by Dabney Coleman. But if you kind of understand what the setup is, you can kind of understand where this movie is going. Obviously, we're going to be talking spoilers because this movie came out in 1980, but I will turn it over to Sharon first. Sharon, when was the first time you saw 9 to 5, and what did you think rewatching it for this episode?
Well, I first saw 9 to 5 in 1980 when it was released, and when I rewatched it, I was surprised at just how much I remembered, because I haven't seen the movie in decades probably, but as I sat there watching it, not only did I thoroughly enjoy it, but I also really knew pretty well what was going to happen, what was happening in the movie. It's a great movie. It's really a great movie.
What about you, Susan?
I also saw it when it came out in theaters. This thing, there used to be these things called malls, and the malls had theaters in them. And then you used to go all together and sit down in the big auditorium of a movie theater and watch a movie with a big crowd of people. And it was a really exciting way to see a movie. And though I was surprised how much I did not remember about this movie. I remembered the movie pretty fondly, definitely remembered the song, definitely remembered the three of them. I forgot some big giant story points like the fantasy sequences. I completely forgot about, which are a huge part of the movie.
Yes, they are.
But I do remember the feeling that there really hadn't been anything like this movie, with a giant studio comedy starring arguably three of the most, sort of biggest stars, whether in music or in film. Like Jane Fonda had 2 Academy Awards, I think, at this point. And so it was really kind of a phenomenon, as I remember it being, like a huge hit, and just kind of it was just there. And movies lingered for a long time too. So if a movie was successful, it would play for months and months in the movie theaters. And sort of, anyway, so that's what I remember about it when it came out. I was pretty young, but I definitely saw it and enjoyed it.
So I had never seen it before. I
know, because you're a baby.
I watch movies, I watched Harry and Tonto, which is older than this movie.
Chris, had you heard of it before?
Yeah, I'd heard of it. I've obviously heard the song. My wife is a huge fan of Dolly Parton. So, and I knew the setup, because again, the setup is rather ununique in modern times. We've seen movies like, even I think, Susan, when you and I talked last week, I said something to the effect of like, this is essentially Horrible Bosses in a lot of ways. Like, for sure. That, a better version of that, obviously, because that movie has its own issues. I think this is a much more important movie than Horrible Bosses. There's a lot less here that is needing to be played for comedy constantly, because that movie is like a joke fest and a gag fest all the way. But I didn't know kind of some of the places this movie was going to go. But again, I knew it was all about, the three main characters dealing with their asshole boss, who they just can't stand for obvious reasons, because Dabney Coleman, not sure there's a better actor in the 80s playing a shitheel better than Dabney Coleman.
He was great.
Yeah, from Hot to Trot to Modern Problems to Beverly Hillbillies to this. He's just all over the place in the 80s and 90s. And he's a great actor, obviously. But the setup, like I said, is kind of just like boilerplate, I guess. But what makes this movie worth watching now, and what obviously made it worth watching then, is the 3 lead performances of Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton. And it's funny, I was talking with my wife and I was like, Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, obviously now for a different age group of audiences, are known for working together in the show on Netflix, Grace and Frankie, which has been extremely successful for the both of them. So it's really funny to see them now, in 80 working together, and then having seen, I think, the first 2 or 3 seasons of Grace and Frankie, how their working relationship has now changed and matured as they've matured together. And it's interesting to see all of that kind of starting here, and finding out that Dolly Parton, this is the first time I've seen her in anything, she's a really good actress. Not that I doubted it, but there is an expectation when someone is good at one aspect of entertainment that they may not be able to carry that over into something else. Clearly not the case with Dolly Parton. She, I think, outshines everybody in the movie. Not intentionally on her part or anything. I think it's just unintentional, because when Dolly Parton walks into the room, she commands the room. I'm not saying Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda don't, but they don't have the presence that Dolly Parton does. And I think that obviously it's 2022. Dolly Parton still has as big of a presence now. as she ever has, probably bigger even. So it's just a testament to the people who made this movie and worked on this movie that we're still talking about this movie. And I think this movie still has a lot to offer for contemporary audiences, I guess.
Well, and it's interesting because this was Dolly Parton's first movie.
Right.
Like, that's just crazy. And she's so like natural. She's like, I think when you're saying that she's better, she is more natural in that role than Jane Fonda is in hers. And even Lily Tomlin is in hers. Like, Jane Fonda
kind of playing herself though, right?
She's kind of playing herself. That's what I'm saying. And but it comes across so well. Right. Jane Fonda is playing a character.
Yeah.
Right.
She's playing
almost against type. Yeah.
Almost against type. Mm-hmm. And Lily Tomlin is also playing a character, a little more in type, but definitely, whereas Dolly Parton is playing herself if she was a secretary and not a singer.
Yeah. Her name could be Dolly Parton in the movie. Like, Dolly Rhodes could be her name. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. I think when you have someone who's as iconoclastic as Dolly Parton, it almost benefits the screenwriters to just say, just kind of do you, because that's what everybody knows. And even if that's kind of a cop-out, it totally works. And so it's not a cop-out. If she wasn't good, I don't think, everybody be like, well, you should have cast somebody else. But because she's so good, it's like, oh, please, more Dolly Parton. Just give us more of that.
Yeah. And I think it was like when Jane Fonda was because Jane Fonda was instrumental in casting the other two roles. She had wanted to work with Lily Tomlin. And so I think she was thinking of Lily Tomlin first. But she talks about seeing Dolly Parton somewhere and seeing with her nails and thinking, oh, that's the secretary, right? That's the Violet. No, which I get confused by their names.
Violet is Lily Tomlin. Dolly Parton is, oh my gosh, I can't remember.
Dora Lee Rhodes.
Dora Lee Rose, yes. And
nice Southern name, too, on top of everything. Yeah, the most Southern of Southern names.
Yes. And so it fits the Dolly, like, certainly that character in some ways feels like it was written for Dolly Parton to play.
Yeah.
Which I think it was kind of. So, but it's just so interesting because Dolly Parton, while being kind of a hugely successful and approaching iconic country star, she was a country music star. She was not like, oh, let's put her in the movies. She had done television. She'd done some television specials, I think, and stuff. But I think that, we think of Dolly Parton now we know that she has survived and thrived and become this stunning icon of both, almost like the kind of performer that doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah. Yes. Not that could exist now. I mean, maybe a close contemporary example might be someone like Beyonce, based on the reach and philanthropy again. But again, Dolly Parton is like a hyper philanthropist too, which is which not a thing. I mean, it is a thing now, but like you said, Susan, not in the way that people are anymore. Like Dolly, I don't know how many performers exist anymore like Dolly Parton. It's a short list and it's getting shorter every year, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I mean, and so it was pretty amazing to put her, I just still remember like, oh, these are huge stars all together, right? It was an all-star cast. And even though, again, Dolly Parton hadn't done a movie, she was so well known as a performer, that it did feel like she was their equal, which is kind of interesting because, again, Jane Fonda had a movie career that was pretty friggin' incredible. And would go on to continue her movie career. But this was sort of interesting that this was, I think, one of the first movies she developed with her own production company. So anyway, they're all really fun. I mean, the best part of this movie is the three of them, right? And when they're working together or they're in scenes, even just two, when they're in scenes between two of each of them, it's all fun. Like, you just want more of them. And even going off with that, and Dabney Coleman is pretty great at playing a complete douche.
Yeah.
So,
comes naturally to him, very naturally.
But even so, with regard to Dabney Coleman, it's just based on conversations I've had with women who worked in offices during that time. I don't think he was that unusual.
No.
I don't think his behavior was that unusual, sadly. And even to this day, there are still women like Lily Tomlin's character who are the one that trains all the people that go on to be her bosses someday. Many of them still men, because they're not valued, or they're perceived as, oh, we can't take her out of that job because who would do it? Well, that's not fair necessarily, but I marvel at how very well drawn each of those three women's characters were. The office dynamics, just all of it, head to toe, was just was a revelation when I rewatched it this time. Because back when it first came out, I wasn't thinking of movies or television shows in this way. I just either liked it or I didn't, and I knew that I really loved this movie because I've seen it many times, even though, as I said, it's been a while. I just knew that it worked on some level, on many levels, and really loved it.
Well, and to your point, Sharon, I mean, movies come out like this now, but they're not entertaining. They're it's like it's a serious look at it, or it's a drama, and I know that Jane Fonda said she wanted this movie to be a drama. I'm not sure we'd be talking about it now if it had been. I think something about the usage of comedy to diffuse the immediate kind of ickiness of what we're talking about helps a lot, but because I know Jane Fonda's like, I would have preferred this movie be a drama. And I'm sure the actual 9 to 5 movement would have preferred if this movie had been a drama. But the fact that it's not a drama and it still manages to be successful is impressive. Because like you said, Sharon, I mean, if I had seen this movie in 1980, I probably would have been like, yeah, this is good. But I don't like the importance of it wouldn't have resonated because, again, even when y'all saw it in the 80s, you weren't working 9 to 5. The women that were working 9 to 5 saw this and went, holy shit, somebody gets it. And they understand. And we're not, I mean, we are being ignored, but we're not being ignored as much as we thought we were. And hopefully, and obviously, and clearly, something like this did help in as much as it could help. I mean, again, nobody was expecting this movie to change the world, but right. It brought light to something that was important, which is the people in the office who are being overlooked for whatever reason. Because it's not just the female characters in this movie too. We have, you see the entire office is being abused by the upper management, which, right. Obviously, like you said, Sharon, still going on today. That has not stopped, and that will never stop, no matter how many movies, songs, and TV shows that talk about how terrible it is. Terrible bosses will exist forever, but to see a revenge fantasy played out in such a, kind of frank way, outside of the dream sequences, which I was not a huge fan of. I think this movie, it still resonates, but those dream sequences really are out of place, or like the fantasy sequences, they're very out of place for me.
I completely disagree.
Okay, that's fair. I kind of figured as much. This may be like the one spot where I may be kind of in a different corner here, because for me it kind of ground the movie to a halt. Only because, and I get that they were using it as an opportunity to show that there were going to be things happening to him, possibly, that they were dreaming about doing, but they went on just a little too long, each one, and like back to back to back, like break them up throughout the movie or something, because like putting them back to back to back just like grinds the movie to a halt. But I'm wrong. I could be wrong. That's my opinion. I'm curious, Sharon. What was kind of your take on those scenes? Because like for me, it just kind of stops the movie in its tracks.
I absolutely loved the fantasy sequences. They were, each of them was, to me, very entertaining, very much in character for each of the three women. Very different as a result. I love them. I still feel that they fit perfectly into this movie. And it, in some ways, it really helps with what comes next.
Right.
I think, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's the hard part I have about those is like, I know that he then gets poisoned with the rat poison. They even
No,
do
he
the
doesn't
shot.
actually.
Right,
He doesn't
right.
get poisoned.
Doesn't
Right.
get poisoned.
Yeah.
But then they have the scene with Jane Fonda pointing the gun at him like in the dream sequence. I mean, and then you have Dolly Parton hog tying him like in the dream sequence. It's just, I just feel like they go on a little too long. But
I think one of the things that they, as you're pointing out, those two things that happen in the dream sequences then happened in the course of the story, and perhaps that may have informed what they did. They had fantasies about this, and then the next thing they know, they're kind of acting it out. I honestly, I never really thought that through. I just know that I enjoyed them, and I felt that they resonated with me. I mean, who hasn't had a fantasy or two if you've had an awful boss about what you would do if you had the opportunity?
yeah.
I guess I figured most audiences would be able to understand that thought pattern.
Well, okay, all right. So a couple of things that I have to say, which is I'm going to again ride the middle, right?
Oh,
they do
fair.
go on a little too long for me. However, I actually think that they are they help set the tone of the movie that we're in, because it starts off, it's a weird tone, and I'm going to say that Colin Higgins is directly responsible for this. Of course, I mean, he and Colin Higgins wrote the film Harold and Maude.
Right.
So talking about something that is sort of absurd and dark and funny and weird, right? Like, and then also wrote and directed fairly right before this, Foul Play, one of my favorite Chevy Chase movies. Have you seen Foul Play, Chris?
Nope.
Okay. Well, see, if you saw Foul Play, some of this might make sense.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, again, it's a tonally mixed movie.
It is
It's a dramedy. It's not. It's a dramedy. I would say if you made this movie today, they would probably lean harder on the drama, because that's the new comedy way of doing things, at least with stuff like this, is to really lean on the drama, but give the comedy some time. But I think it would be more of a dramedy now, probably in the vein of, like, I don't want to say Judd Apatow, but I don't know.
It might be. I mean, I think that's the way you would do it now.
Like you said, Bridesmaids, which is Paul Feig. So
yeah. But I do think that they were heading towards this pretty egregious move or three by the ladies. So I think the fantasy sequences are there to absurd the movie up, so that when Lily Tomlin actually, when Jane Fonda thinks she's killed him, and then when it's Lily Tomlin thinks, well, who kills him? Lily Tomlin. No,
Lily Tomlin thinks she's given him rat poison. Yeah, because she was high or drunk.
And then is basically like, and again, we're spoiling here, she's going to steal his corpse from the hospital. So, and then from there, they realize they don't, but then they're getting blackmailed. And so then they basically end up shooting at him. And
in the office, they're discharging a gun in their office
several times.
Yeah, they're right.
Several times. They're tying him up, and then they're basically kidnapping him and taking him back to his home and keeping him basically hogtied for weeks, right?
In like a gimp suit, essentially a gimp suit without a mask.
Yes.
And he's like suspended from the ceiling on like.
Yeah. Well, that's what they do if he gets out of line, or if he tries to.
Right.
That's their because he's stronger than they are, so they have to have some way to.
They have to have some mechanism, and again, kind of brilliant because they set it up with Jane Fonda fixing her garage door opener.
Lily Tomlin, because she's the one with kids, and
God, I don't know
she
why.
Loves, and she likes smoking weed too, which I loved the scene with the three of them smoking grass together. Only because it was one joint, and like, I mean, come on now, holy cow! I mean, I love movies in the 70s and 80s and the way they portray marijuana, because it's always just so foreign and strange and new and exciting.
It's like wow, we're gonna do this.
Oh, one joint, like Jesus Christ!
then it was still.
Yeah.
not as mainstream, if you will, as it is now. And so it was this dangerous thing to do. So
yeah.
You're talking about watching Dolly Parton smoke a joint. Mm-hmm. Like a country superstar smoking a joint was radical.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much for Lily Tomlin. You're probably like, yeah, no, she's done that before.
I imagine of the three, Lily Tomlin is one who's like, this is a Saturday afternoon for me.
But so they go to a crazy place with this movie and the acts that the women and the characters are going to do in this movie against their boss. And so not only I think is that like he's got to be the worst boss and be completely deserving of the treatment that he's going to get later in the movie, but those fantasy sequences completely break you out of reality long enough that they're also saying this movie is absurd and it is a fantasy and welcome to the party. So, but I agree they go on too long. Particularly, and this is maybe in light of sort of the world of gun violence that we are very aware of right now, but the Jane Fonda with the gun goes on too long, and her shooting him, I had completely forgot, like shooting at him at near point blank range, missing him, but like she could have shot him. And that felt, whoa, that feels like a step too far.
It starts becoming fun revenge fantasy when all of a sudden people are using a gun. It's fun when Lily Tomlin is, going to roast him over a fire and Dolly Parton is tying him up. Like, that's fun. Or I guess she's not the one roasting him over the fire. Lily Tomlin is the Snow White fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But those are fun. And then the Jane Fonda one is just kind of like, oh, shit.
I'm just going to shoot him.
I'm just going to murder you. Like
a deer?
All right. Like, sure. Oh, she's supposed to be like Annie Oakley, right? I mean, she's kind of dressed up. And it works, but I think to both of your points, like the idea that they use these fantasy moments to break up an otherwise kind of serious movie. Again, the kind of if I look at it that way, I totally understand why they're in there. I think now they wouldn't do it that way. Probably it would be something else.
The tone is really odd, and it's in that weird late 70s, early 80s tone where I think they just didn't know how to mix, like how to do a dramedy. And it was also, again, this was a comedy that just was kind of shot in a really realistic way in some ways, other than the fantasy sequences, particularly the opening of the movie. The title sequence and the song feels like a documentary about going to work in New York. Like it's so the look of the show feels like late 70s, but the comedy tone of the show feels like early 80s. And the beginning of that 80s sort of heightened office comedy, surreal almost elements. So I don't know, that's where I think I think it totally works for this movie, but and it worked for Foul Play, which is a bonkers movie in some ways, like even more bonkers than this, but has a similar look in that it's got a more sort of realistic palette to the film, but the comedy and the events of that movie are like just crazy. I couldn't even try to capsize it for you.
Well, and that's the thing about this movie. Like we've mentioned, there's a moment where they're going to the morgue to steal a dead body, and they're keeping him in his house for 6 weeks. Like that's absurd and ridiculous, and it works only. I think I think you're right, Sharon. It brings it around to make it real, like but I hadn't thought about it taking that realism and breaking up the realism, because then it works. Then I completely understand why they're doing it, because that is the inflection point of the movie, really, is that marijuana scene, because everything that happens afterwards is very different. It's not that the stakes are higher, because that once the weird, absurd stuff starts happening, the stakes have essentially kind of disappeared almost, because there's once the movie says, all right, this is what's going to happen, but the characters are going to figure out a way to deal with it. It's not the same as watching these three women being abused by their boss. It's the playing out of the fantasy, and so the stakes kind of get transformed. But actually, I mean, other than them being a little long, like if they hadn't been there, the movie might have felt even stranger. Like the tone throughout may have been even more of a hard hill for most people to get over, especially in the 80s.
I mean,
and when you go into
go ahead.
when you go into it knowing that it's supposed to be a comedy, it's I think it was easier for the audience to put up with what was happening in the first act of the movie. Because think about, you've got Lily Tomlin, who this man is basically trying to make her sleep with him, which is not great, which it essentially could be considered rape. Lily Tomlin, whose character has been used and abused by this company, and they refuse to promote her. They refuse to give her what she's due, what she's worked for, what she's earned. Granted, Jane Fonda's kind of, our eyes and ears to a certain extent of the audience, because she's the one coming in new and seeing all of what's going on here. Not to mention the way all the other women are treating Dora Lee, because they all think that she's sleeping with the boss. There's a lot of not so pleasant stuff going on in the first act of this movie. But then when you hit that button and it goes over to the absurd, starting with the corpse heist and after Lily Tomlin.
Well, I think starting with the fantasy elements.
Yeah, starting with the fantasy elements, then the corpse heist. And now you're in a completely different situation. And what comes next with what's happening to you certainly feel that Dabney Coleman's character just kind of deserves what's happening to him. And then meanwhile, they're using their power for good and not for evil, to make things better for not for just themselves, but for all their coworkers too. I think all of those things together are what make the movie work at the end of the day for me. Oh,
I was going to say, it's one of my favorite sequences is them in the car with the body in the trunk, because it's just, like, I could watch that movie all day. I could watch the three of them on a caper in a car,
yes,
trying to get away with something. But also when they finally go, okay, here's our plan. When they finally have a plan, which is, okay, we've gotten ourselves into a lot of trouble. Now we have to figure out how to dig ourselves out. Mm-hmm. Then again, you're like, okay, so now they have a plan, and now they're working together to fix the office and to make it seem like he's still around. And, it's basically Remington Steele at that point.
Oh, gosh, that's right. Yes.
Pretty much.
We're going to do all the work. He's there somewhere. There's a fake boss running around. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also like really find the tone finds itself after those fantasy sequences, weirdly, and I think again it's that weird thing of like the fantasy sequences are so over the top that then when we get into stuff that's pretty whacked out, it's not that, and we've sort of given little hints of what's to come, right?
Right. Well, there's animated characters in this movie. I mean, there's a point where Lily Tomlin is interacting with like an animated fucking rabbit and like a deer and a bird. So, but again, like there is another movie here, right? There's a movie here that doesn't get not made, but it's tonally different. But there's that moment where they're having that, the marijuana smoke, and they're sitting there and they're, what would you do? And what would you, if they had just, I would kill him. I would kill him. And that's it. No fantasy sequences. It's a completely different movie. Yeah. And I don't think that they could get away with, I don't think if this movie had the fantasy sequences, they wouldn't do the corpse heist or have Dabney Coleman, suspended from the ceiling. It just wouldn't play. You'd be like, what tone is this then? Mm-hmm. So I think they made that conscious choice clearly to just be like, all right, cards on the table, this movie's silly. But they waited like a half an hour for you to understand that it's silly. Because I mean, there's characters in The Office that are like depressing to think about. Like,
I know that
Barney Miller's own Peggy Pope, who shows up in 6 episodes of Barney Miller. She's great as like another character that, could have been in on what they're doing. Thankfully, she's not, because she ends up benefiting from all the good that they're doing. But in another kind of movie, that could have been one of the characters that's on the journey with them. And then you have the character of Roz, who is the one person in the office who actually likes Dabney Coleman, I guess. So, and she plays the kind of sycophant that refuses to not eavesdrop on her own, co-workers. But it's interesting because in another movie, those characters would have had more to do. There would have been more they almost stopped doing anything at the office after that point. You don't see what's going on at the office. And that's obviously the huge that's the huge punchline at the end of the movie is, well, they made The Office better. Everybody thought The Office was going to be burning down because he's not there, but they have taken The Office and upped, the productivity's up 30% or something to that effect. But there's a different movie in there. And I'm glad that this is not that movie because it works better. But, if somebody made this movie now, they may not even make a comedy. They may just strip all the fun parts out and just do a drama. But
because it's a revenge fantasy movie. That's what this movie is a revenge.
It doesn't have to be a
movie.
comedy.
It doesn't have to be a comedy.
No.
And like you said, horrible bosses.
Which is a comedy. Which is a comedy, though.
Which is a comedy. I'm trying to think if there's something else. But, I like books. So I'm just going to bring in the book I found about 9 to 5.
Forward by Jane Fonda.
With a forward by Jane Fonda. It's called Working 9 to 5, A Women's Movement, a Labor Union, and the Iconic Movie. And it is literally about how the women's movement and women going into the workplace and facing all of this discrimination and facing all of these harsh working conditions that were really impactful on them, helped them to form basically a labor union, which I didn't realize. I mean, that's literally, I was completely unaware there was a 9 to 5 movement that was very political labor movement that was about workers' rights that benefited everybody, but was really organized and pushed forward by women and women working in sort of those office pools and doing all the work of companies. And then that Jane Fonda knew one of the women that was fundamental to that movement. And so was hearing about all the things and was like, well, that's what I want to make a movie about. So can I read a little bit?
Go for it.
So she gets Collins to come on board. And she basically brought the creative team to meet with members of the workers group. And they gathered a group of 30 or 40 women in their Cleveland offices. And after introductions, Higgins posed a question that somehow we never thought to ask in all our years of recruitment lunches. Have you ever fantasized about killing your boss? At first, there was silence, then nervous giggles. Finally, one woman raised her hand. She imagined pulverizing her boss in a coffee grinder, she said, allowing the grounds to drip into the carafe, and then, drinking him.
Where was that in this movie?
The room exploded.
Oh my God.
And then one after one, women basically then began to chime in with their own dreams of revenge. Ooh. And that's where the fantasy sequences came from.
Oh, fucking dark. That first one's real dark.
That first one
pulverizing him and turning him into coffee.
I mean, can you imagine?
That's that's a different kind of movie.
Yeah, that is that. So that is like, I don't know if either one of you have ever heard of a film called Office Killer. It's a Cindy Sherman film. Cindy Sherman, the artist. It's kind of a revenge fantasy in the way that this is, but it is it's a horror movie essentially. It's Carol Kane playing kind of the Jane Fonda character, but a little bit more kind of nebbish and reserved, and she gets revenge on all the people she works with, including Molly Ringwald and Jeanne Triplehorn, a couple other people. But it has those same kind of the revenge fantasy beats, but it's a completely different story. It's a horror movie. It's pretty grotesque. It's pretty gross, frankly. And this, I mean, again, that's the grinding your boss into coffee or whatever the hell they're talking. Like, Jesus Christ.
So
ooh, I really hated your boss, and I probably deserved it. I'm sure he deserved it.
I was going to say, and then
there's no way he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty long, drawn out, and very specific fantasy.
Well, and then drinking, right?
I mean, hey, just like there's those, those stories of the, when you're a warrior and you kill the other warrior, take their scalp or something. It's the same idea. Just drink your boss, I guess. All right, absorb his power.
So there isn't Swimming with Sharks, the movie. Have you seen Swimming with Sharks?
That's what.
Isn't that
Kevin Spacey?
Revenge?
Yes.
Kevin Spacey being a terrible boss. And I think he gets kidnapped or something. Like, I forget what happens in that, but I think it is the
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. He's the kid that's working, like, kidnaps him, or he gets kidnapped. I don't know. The bad boss gets kidnapped, and I know that. So there, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, oh, what other movies are like this movie? Anyway, but back to the comedy element of it.
The less coffee grinding murder.
Less coffee grinding
Jesus.
murder. So now that she's just shooting him with a shotgun, maybe it's just fine. See, if you go too far, then when you pull back a little bit, it seems reasonable.
But I never really thought about the fact, though, that about how awful the first part of the movie is, and nor had I thought about, thought of other movies that really blended the seriousness of what's going on in the first half of this movie with what happens next. I have not seen Foul Play. I don't think it sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't think I've seen it. But I really can't think of anything else that's done that as well, except maybe I was going to say Office Space, but that's really not quite the same in that it's, Lundberg is not a great boss, but he's not the evil incarnate that they make Dabney Coleman's character out to be in this movie. So, it just blending the tone, if you will, across the seriousness of the first part and then the fantasy in the middle, and then, what happens at the end.
And then it's kind of a mix after that, right? Like it's pretty serious at the beginning, then you get these wacky fantasies, and then you end up with this mix of both of them as you continue down. So just to see if I can trigger anything, here's Foul Play. Because again, I don't think you can completely understand this movie, and certainly not what comes next, without understanding that Colin Higgins made Foul Play, starring Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. And here's the one-line description. A shy San Franciscan librarian and a bumbling cop fall in love as they solve a crime involving albinos, dwarves, and the Catholic Church.
I mean, I'm game. That's Chevy Chase. I mean, there were a few actors who had as good of a career in the late 70s and mid 80s as Chevy Chase, at least comedic actors.
Listen,
and I've seen all of 0 Goldie Hawn movies. So
really,
0.
Gosh.
Wow. We might have to do a whole run.
I've never seen. I don't think I've seen. What's the movie where she's in the military?
Private Benjamin.
Yeah, never seen that.
Which also, oh my God, I think that's an 80s movie, and it launched a TV show.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot about the TV show. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
we always forget about the TV show. Yeah, well, we don't anymore.
I was saying, I hope y'all don't, because that's the thing. That was the entry point for this movie for the three of us to talk about it. There was a 9 to 5 TV show, which is a straight comedy, right?
It is. Well, here's the funny thing. So yes and no, like everything. Okay. 9 to 5 TV show inspired by the movie, basically remaking the movie in a lot of ways. Sitcom. But the first 2 years, and again, I've only watched one episode because they're hard to find, is because we're going to have to cover this on 80s TV Ladies. I thought it ran for one season. I barely remembered it existed. So I did not remember this show from childhood at all. It ran for 5 seasons, which was insane to remember.
Oh my God.
And the first season does have a more realistic tone than a traditional sitcom, I would say. But the last 3 is like a really bad sitcom. The characters are great. The actors, it's got an interesting cast. The cast shifts almost every season, but the original cast is Rachel Dennison, who is Dolly Parton's sister, who basically plays the Dolly Parton part, because if you can't get Dolly Parton, I guess you just get her sister. And it's kind of the only thing that she's really ever done on network television, as far as I could see. But she's pretty good. She's not bad. It's just so weird.
That little stunt casting. Like, oh, Dolly Parton's sister. Sure, why not?
And then Rita Moreno, who's friggin' awesome, playing Violet, and Valerie Curtin playing Judy. So so Rita Moreno is playing the Lily Tomlin character.
That makes sense.
And Valerie Curtin is basically playing the Jane Fonda character. Jane Fonda produced the show, but then she and the sort of showrunner left because I think that somebody said, we got to go in this direction. And she's like, nope, that's not the show. Because by the time the later seasons come, it's not about women running the office. It's not even about the women. It's about this boss, this male boss who's not that bad and who's really just trying to get work done and keeps getting interrupted by these crazy women with their crazy plans. And you're like, what has happened?
You miss the idea completely.
They have completely gone. I think the original thing started that way, and then it just got crept over into, it's just a wacky workplace comedy, and that boss is just harried, that male boss, by all these crazy women with their crazy plans.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Way to lose sight of the original movie by like a country mile. Jeez Louise.
But think about this weird franchise, right? It hasn't had a sequel, but it launched a 5-season TV show. And then, of course, the song is forever embedded. I think you knew the song, right?
Yeah, the song has shown up in other things enough that I think everybody knows the song. And I mean, again, it's Dolly Parton. I'm just gonna. This is the only Dolly Parton song I know. Let me just say that.
There are probably others that you know that you just don't know that they're Dolly Parton songs.
Right. Oh, I know she's written a lot of. I know she wrote a lot. She was a prolific writer who I think she is. Dolly Parton is the one who said, the smartest thing I ever did was turning it was one of the Whitney Houston songs, right? She wrote a song for Whitney Houston. It's like, I'm cashing checks forever. And I didn't even sing the damn thing. Like, what?
She didn't write it.
Sang that. Yeah, she did. Sang the Dolly Parton song, "I Will Always Love You." Dolly had recorded it years before, and it was Kevin Costner. So we're getting off track. Kevin Costner thought, this should be in the movie, and Whitney should sing it. That's how that came about. But getting back to the 9 to 5 song, just again as a little aside, Dolly was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They did the concert this weekend or a weekend before, and I remember seeing a clip of, because they do sort of a tribute other artists singing their songs. Pretty sure they sang 9 to 5. Pretty sure they sang 9 to 5 on stage at that induction ceremony. That's how indelible that 40-plus-year-old song is. It's amazing.
All right, so I'm gonna basically, okay, so here's the "I Will Always Love You," which is Whitney. We got to go back to Bodyguard, right? Because again, Dolly Parton wrote that song, which is and was a hit, and and was one of the things that made her hit. But she wrote it as a breakup song with the guy that had sort of made her, who had a TV show, right? And she was sort of his girl singer, and they were basically a variety show. And he was like, "Stay with me for 5 years, and then whatever." And she was like, "Yeah, I gotta go now." So she wrote this song basically saying, "I love you, but I gotta go." That's what the song is about: is breaking up with her manager, basically, or her TV partner guy who gave her first shot at TV. She was already a musician and doing stuff. And he said, "Okay, I'll let you out of your contract, but I get to produce the song." And then Whitney Houston. So the best thing she ever did was say, "Yes, you can use my song for The Bodyguard, and someone else can sing it."
Yeah,
because it did become a huge hit. But I mean, come on, you've heard the song Jolene.
Yeah, of course. I have. No, you know what? You're right. I have heard that song. And that, you know what? I like that song more than 9 to 5 because I have heard that song a lot more. You're right. Yes. I hadn't even thought about it. You're right. Damn.
Jane Fonda. So now I'm remembering, and then all about songs, I'm now remembering that Jane Fonda was listening to the song Two Doors Down while she was thinking about the 9 to 5 movie. And that's what made her think of Dolly Parton for the role. Which is, again, it may not be a song that you remember, but you probably, if you heard it, you go, "Oh yeah, 2 doors down, they're laughing and drinking and having a party. 2 doors down."
I've never heard that song.
And it's
I've heard it now.
A woman who's been broken up with, and then here's this party and decides to get back in the game. It's a great song.
So they were working on a sequel as recently as 2018. And then in 2019, I guess they all kind of said, well, we're not working on it anymore. But they were talking about in 2018 a modern day setting with them reprising
the three of them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which would have been interesting, I think. I mean, there's a lot that can be said. I mean, the work world is 3 years on from 2019 is a fucking different place completely. But then in 2019, I think it could have been an interesting movie, but would have had a lot of interesting things to say and some I could see that trailer for that movie that never happened. Like
Right.
I could see it. Like
because you got 3 stars, right?
Right. Like now even more so,
now,
frankly.
Yeah. I mean, it's Hocus Pocus 2, right? Like it took a while,
in a lot of ways, hopefully it would be better and more tonally consistent with the characters, but that's kind of a strange thing about this is, like you mentioned, Sharon, the song is so well known. There was a TV show. These actresses are still working today, and yet there was no sequel. Nobody said, well, this 9 to 5 is a known thing. Obviously Dolly Parton is on Grace and Frankie, or she was towards the end of the show, which somebody had to have been like, you guys need to do it now if you're going to do it. But I kind of wonder, why they never followed through with the project, because it would have been an interesting movie, to say the least, at least with just the 3 of them on screen together again.
I think, and again, go ahead.
There at that time, there wasn't this propensity to make sequels out of every successful movie. So I have a feeling that had a lot to do with it. And they all probably went off doing their own thing. Jane Fonda went off and made more movies. I think On Golden Pond came out about the time that the TV show came out, and certainly Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton also went off and did other things. So that probably has a lot to do with it. The timing of it. If it had come out maybe 5-10 years or later, maybe there probably would have been more of a push to do more. But
yeah, I think there weren't a lot of sequels to comedy. Like, you know what I'm saying? This was the beginning of like Star Wars. There was, there was sequels to sort of more genre stuff, but it was really hard, I think, for people to kind of it wasn't just, can we keep going with this in every movie that you did? They all sort of felt like one-offs. And then it was like the beginning of, we're just gonna, if it's hit, there's a 2, right? Coming.
Well, not to mention the fact that I would imagine that there were executives somewhere saying, well, we've already done that movie with those gals. Why would we need to do that again?
Why would we make another movie with 3 women in the lead?
Yeah, I can't. I would imagine that was part of the equation as well.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, we're launching a Police Squad, a little limited podcast series, and we talked about Airplane, the original ZAZ movie, and we touched a little bit on the sequel, which they're not involved with. Abrams Zucker not involved with that sequel at all. We talked a little bit about it, but I think we kind of, Mike White and Mark Begley and I came to this kind of conclusion that the 3 of us are kind of coming to now, which is like comedy movies, I don't even think need sequels anyways. It's kind of this weird thing where if I think about sequels to comedies, for the most part in the grand genre, if you look at the genre holistically, most comedy sequels are just doing the same thing the first movie did, often to really diminishing returns. And like just even into the second movie, I mean, like Anchorman 2, my God, like just using a contemporary example. I don't think anybody's going, oh, I love that second Anchorman. Like, why does this exist? And 9 to 5 probably may have felt the same way if they had made it right after that first movie came out. I doubt any of the original cast would have been there. Nothing. Like it would have been in the shell of its former self, like the TV show.
Well, and here's the thing. So Jane Fonda is in the middle of like arguably like the most incredible run of very diverse movies. Like, 78, she does Coming Home. She stars in Coming Home, Comes a Horseman, California Suite. That's all in 1978. 1979, China Syndrome, The Electric Horseman, another giant hit movie, both of those. And then 1980, 9 to 5, 1981, On Golden Pond. I mean, like, holy crap, just that run of movies. Like, she's one of the biggest movie stars in the world because all these movies are hits. All these movies are critical successes as well. Like,
not to mention her workout tapes
and her philanthropy and her anti-Vietnam War protesting. Yeah, like everybody asks me, like, how do you find time in the day to do all this work, Chris? How does Jane Fonda find time in the day to exist and be? Well, she just got arrested. What, last year? Was it this year?
For climate.
Yeah, like March. On the steps of the Supreme Court, I think, or something in Washington, because I remember they're like, Jane Fonda has been arrested. It's like, all right, Jane Fonda's been arrested before, so plenty of times. I don't know how Jane Fonda has time to do anything, given how prolific she has been just as a force for good out of the industry.
Yeah, and again, turned out to be pretty right. I think.
I would be inclined to agree with you.
I mean, because I remember also the time when Jane Fonda was hated for her anti-Vietnam stance.
Of course.
And hated very, very, like, for decades. But then we also want to talk about Lily Tomlin, because I thought when I was rewatching, I was like, well, so she was a star because of for some reason I thought The Incredible Shrinking Woman had happened before 9 to 5, but it happened after. But I also was like, oh,
Nashville, wasn't it?
It was Nashville. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of film, but remember she was on Laugh-In too. She had the operator character. I think that's where most people first came to know her a little bit, and then she did all kinds of things after that.
Well, and I also thought that she had a huge stage success with a one-woman show, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. I can't even say it, where she played all these characters and as well. And that I just assumed was before the 9 to 5 movie, but it was not. It came after, which is really interesting. So she co-wrote that show with her partner, Jane Wagner. I think that's right. It was like off Broadway or Broadway, but it was a big hit. And then there was a movie made out of it later. But
Lily Tomlin, for a lot of people my age, they don't even know that they know Lily Tomlin. They just know her as Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus, which is mind-blowing for someone my age to realize that. Because I mean, I was watching that as a kid, like when it was coming out in the mid 90s, and to think about the voice of Mrs. Frizzle, and it says, "Oh, right, it's Lily Tomlin." Like, to think about that, there are not stars like Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton anymore. Because Lily Tomlin, self-made, off-Broadway, comedian, made really good. Dolly Parton, country western singer, made beyond good. And same with Jane Fonda. And those three don't exist anymore. Not the way that they did then. And I think a lot of it goes back to, you kind of mentioned, Sharon, there were 3 TV channels. There aren't anymore now. So there's a dearth of content constantly, and everybody and any kind of person can be important now. So maybe it's a good thing they don't exist that way anymore, because we can all get in on being important and helping out in ways that we can, but they paved the way for the rest of us. And for, I think, obviously, a large amount of women working in the industry, they have a lot of really positive things, I'm sure, to say about the effect that 9 to 5 and other movies made in that time period had on their careers. I happen to be talking to 2 of them right now.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that I was probably a little young to recognize 9 to 5 as a force of this is revolutionary for me. I understand this. I knew my mom was a working mom and a scientist and was facing a ton of sexism, most of which she kept from us at that time. And we only found out later, like, oh yeah, her boss took her name off papers that were published that she should have had her name on, and her boss wouldn't let her leave 15 minutes early so that she could go take classes to get her graduate degree, even though she's like, I'll work through lunch, which is insane. Right?
Infuriating. Infuriating.
But we didn't know those stories then. Wasn't unaware, that she did not share that with us at the time. But I know those stories now, and I know what felt like the stories that I know from just working jobs, particularly in the industry. But even before that, like when I decided to go back to grad school, I knew I didn't need a little bit of money. So I just went and got a job at Citicorp Private Banking as the front receptionist, and it was ridiculous. Like thankfully I did not face like what Dolly Parton faced, but I did face a lot of the other stuff where you're just like, okay, I'm just invisible. And that, I sort of saw enough of it, and certainly experienced a lot of sexism in the film industry. But I'm thinking of like office work jobs, which I had kind of before I went into the film industry. Because I kind of avoided office work when I started film industry. I was like, I'm not going to work. I was afraid of getting stuck at the time that I stepped into Hollywood. One of the ways in was to work in development, and a lot of women ended up working in development. And what I could perceive from, still a little bit of the outside coming out of film school was that development was a place to get stuck, right? You get stuck being a very important person in development, but you were not going to rise up from there. And so I was very much like, and I also knew that I'm a people pleaser, particularly more than I am now. But I was like, oh, I want to do a good job, and I would get stuck just again, sort of in that situation. I was very mindful when I was starting, and I wanted to really focus on writing and directing and being a filmmaker. That in my early days, I basically was like, okay, my day job is going to be not in the industry. And I went and worked for an organization called Children of the Night, which was a rescue facility and hotline and outreach for kids who had been sexually victimized and were basically teen prostitutes. And so it was completely outside in some ways of that world. I could work overnight, because if I worked the hotline, I would work overnight, and that meant I could write and take meetings during the day. So it was sort of a great way to sort of do both jobs. But also it was sort of so removed that it also felt like, oh, I'm having life experience and doing something good that feels real and important while I'm, pitching shows, and stuff to Hollywood. It was a weird dichotomy, but it was so much out of, I don't want to get stuck in an office job in Hollywood because it's not what I wanted. And it felt really easy to get stuck there. Anyway, again, we've gone to a dark place. Back to the movie.
Well, I mean, again, it's the real life implications of where the story comes from, right? I mean, that's just that's the problem with the reality of it. Is the reality is very hard to talk about comedically. There's nothing funny about it,
Which is why I think the movie resonates so well, because it's not preachy. It's not, but you see it. You're totally aware that this is actually happening to women, and you're totally aware that workplace is not a humane place, and that we have to that's really what it's about. Is this place welcoming to people and people's lives? And I think as soon as, in particular, women stepped into that workforce and they were treated so poorly, it also became like, wait, we shouldn't live like this. This should not be okay. And it helped move forward a labor movement that really did put, that's the importance of unions and labor movements, is to make our lives better by putting restrictions on what a company can ask a worker to do and put up with.
Right.
And I think the wish fulfillment of the movie is something that resonated not just with women, but with men. Who hasn't had a boss that you would have fantasies about? Maybe not necessarily grinding them up and drinking their, but nevertheless, you would have some
probably shooting them.
Yeah, about something something you would like to have happen to them, and then the idea that someone comes along in some way, shape, or form to make your work life better, and that the good guys win at the end. Who doesn't like that? Who doesn't want that to be the end of the story? So I think it resonated with just about anybody who works, because no matter what, there's always issues, problems, because there's people everywhere, and everything's not perfect. So I think that's one of the reasons why the movie's so is so good, so resonant, and so even today, in terms of the stories and the storyline in it. And how well received it is.
Well, and it might be a weird connection, but Sharon, you mentioned it. When men think about revenge fantasies, at least someone my age, when I think of getting revenge on your boss, there's one thing that I think of, and it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I'm not joking, but that was what he traded on in the 90s. That's all it was trading on was, you hate your boss, I hate my boss. I can go punch my boss in the face and drop him with a stone cold stunner, but you can't. But you can live vicariously through me. It's just as simple as that, though. And that is what, again, even if you take the labor movement thing out of this, that's what this story is. That's what 9 to 5 is what would you do if you could stick it to your boss? And I think that the biggest success of this movie is not, they lock him up and they're high, whatever. It's the fact that by the end of the movie, when Sterling Hayden, of all fucking people, shows up, he goes, oh, hey, you're doing such a good job. You're out of here. You're doing such a good job. You're being promoted. And the fact that is kind of the punchline of the movie is that if given the opportunity to be their own bosses, not only do they do a good job, they do a better job than he does, and they actually make a difference in the workplace. And a movie in 2022 wouldn't would not have that at the end. That would not be the punchline. That would not be what the movie is driving at. And the fact that the movie actually says, no. The important part of this is that they want to make the workplace better. And by the end of it, they do. The fact that that is where the movie kind of hangs its hat at the end of the film, I think is probably for me the biggest success, is that the movie actually does have something to say. And it's not just, oh, we're taking revenge on our boss. It's like, no, we're going to do better than him. And they'll see it and we'll see it. And even though we don't get any credit for it, which obviously doesn't feel great, at least the boss is gone, which is ostensibly what they were trying to do anyways.
And there's literally a line when they've got him held hostage, they're doing this stuff, and they're realizing they're going to have to keep it up for a while. And they're like, well, if we're going to do this, we might as well do something good around here.
Right.
And that's when they start implementing, time shifting for workstations, and they start implementing like programs to help people with mental health and alcoholism,
daycare
and livelihoods. And I love that they send the sort of the bad gal, the woman that's siding on the side of white supremacy. They're like, well, we got to get her out of here because she'll tell on us. She'll figure it out. So we're going to send her to learn a language. And they send her off to learn a language, and she comes back with more skills. So their revenge on her is to give her more skills for her workplace.
Right. Even the revenge on Dabney Coleman is that he gets a better job and he's gone to go and
they try to
harass other people.
Well, then they try to spin it by saying, oh, in Brazil, where we will be in the jungle and you will be kidnapped later. But I also think that's where they pay off part of those revenge fantasies set up beforehand, where he has no say. He tries to talk back to his big boss, but the big boss isn't listening and basically forces this promotion on him, and that he is going to have to do something he doesn't want to do, which is very much what he was doing to his underlings, is what he gets done to him at the end. So it's not, it's not only like, oh, he's out of there. It's that there's a little bit of now you know what it's like to be told what to do, even when you don't want to, and you have to do it to keep your job. And so I thought that was an interesting twist. I didn't, really? Okay. And I do think that just movie structurally, it was a little bit of sort of a Deus Ex Machina, where God comes, where this character that we have not heard of in the entire movie, that's the head of the company, the missing head of the company, because Dabney Coleman already has a boss. And so, but then he had to have another boss that was even bigger, who was going to come in at the last minute and just be like, this is great. You're doing a great job. And then he's like, well, I can't talk about this. So Jane, so Lily Tomlin finally gets a little bit of due, which is great, but a little bit like, if they had they don't solve their own problem necessarily.
No.
Right? They're about to be in big trouble before the big giant cool boss shows up, who thinks everything's great. And is like, sure, daycare helps our productivity. I think at the end of the day, what would happen in the sequel is that guy would be like, oh, we're making a lot of money now. Why don't we cut some of these programs that cost us something? We better cut that daycare. It costs us something. We'll make more money when we cut it.
Profits before people. That's all we care about.
It always sort of ends up that way, doesn't it?
But what a great performance from Sterling Hayden to just come in for one scene and, kind of steal the show.
He's fantastic. He is fantastic.
But it is a little Deus Ex Machina-y.
Yes, it is. But here's the funny thing. So, as part of the franchise of 9 to 5 that we don't even notice, this is the interesting thing about this. You hadn't heard of this movie, even heard of it. I didn't know. I'm schooling myself up on some 80s television, but Cher and I were unaware of a 9 to 5 TV show that ran in the 80s for 5 years. I also was like, wow, I wonder if this should be a great musical. It already is. It's also a musical.
Oh, well, of course.
It's been on Broadway. That is going on a big giant tour right now. They just had a big, like in 2019, I think pre-pandemic, in the before times, there was a sort of a big revival in the UK, and that is the production that's sort of touring now. Version of that, but it's also being done. Cher and I we could go see it next month. Like in
Really?
down by the LAX airport, there's like some theater doing a production of 9 to 5, the musical.
Wow.
And so of course I had to go see if I could find it. I won't, it's not supposed to be there, but there is a production on YouTube, recording of the Broadway show, which is insane because you shouldn't be on there, YouTube. But
Susan, come on, we know YouTube doesn't care.
Well, that's true, and it was very helpful to me because I got to watch it, and they actually made some adjustments to the book in the musical, and it's a much better and sort of a little more complete of an ending that involves them a little more. They get rid of the middle boss, and so there's just the Dabney Coleman character, and then the big boss out there who then does show up, but it's a little more. They adjusted. I was like, oh, okay. Then they tweaked it up a little bit, so it solved a few problems.
Wouldn't the better ending have been to when Dabney Coleman is summarily sent away to the ending that would have, I think that the tweak that would have worked, and maybe this is what they do in the musical, would it not have worked to have Lily Tomlin be promoted? And that maybe
that's what
alleviates, alleviates some of the problems in the movie with it feeling like Deus Ex Machina.
In my memory, that's what happens to her. But they don't, do they? Like they don't really officially give her the job.
Just like, hey, good job. Like, okay.
And then they take him away. No, in the musical, she gets promoted. She's now running the office. They also are more involved. They're about to, they actually step up. Again, spoiler for the musical. They're being blackmailed, right? And then he's about to give it up. So somehow they're about to give it up. And then Lily Tomlin just steps up and goes, well, actually, here's what happened. We actually kidnapped him. We did this whole thing. She totally confesses that they were involved. And then the Sterling Hayden character doesn't believe them. It's like, that's so funny. You're funny. You girls are funny. And then it's like, but this is what, and then but what's happening here with this, why am I making more money, and then they go on with that. And he gets, hauled away, but Lily Tomlin is definitely promoted by the end of the show.
Yeah. It's just, they have the little kind of the text over the overlay at the end where it's like, and she was promoted and Judy left and Dora Lee became Dolly Parton, I guess.
Yes.
Literally. and then, Dabney Coleman gets kidnapped in the Amazon. It felt like some of that could have been better fleshed out actually in the movie and not left to just the the final credit crawl, or I guess whatever you would call it.
That's kind of a classic movie.
Yeah, that's an 80s thing,
right?
Like freeze frame. Yeah,
that's what happened.
Yeah, it's like Animal House, right? And he went off to be senator. Yeah, it's like it's the same thing. I'm invested enough in these characters where I would have preferred to see a little bit more of the successes that they get out of what they spend all of the movie doing.
And that's what I think is a little bit underwritten that you would do differently now, is what each of these characters, how they each grow or learn. Like Jane Fonda comes in as a divorcee who didn't work and who is fairly naive and, protected, but her husband left her for his secretary. And so she's stepping into the workforce for the first time, which happened to a lot of women in the 70s and 80s for sure. And so she is the new person. She's our audience eyes that bring us into this world. And she has to be the newbie. And then over the course, she's really got the arc, which is then she sort of comes into her own. She originally wants her husband back. And then by the end, when he shows up, she doesn't want him back. She has come into her own person and is developing her sort of her own interests and stuff, but it's pretty light. Yeah. And Dolly Parton does not have an arc. That's what you're saying. Like, when
I don't think anybody
she's
really
gone off
does.
to do a country singer. Like we never saw her.
That's the joke. Like that's the gag. The gag. It's like similar
to yes, it was Dolly Parton.
Yeah, it's like an airplane, right? Where it's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar until it literally just is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's like wait. In that movie, it works better because the absurdity of the comedy there. But here, it's like wait, what? Like
if you're gonna call it at the end, you might as well have given us something in the middle, right?
Yeah, because she was Southern. She's a Southern country western singer. Okay,
yeah, but you're like, but she didn't seem all that interested in that during the movie.
Nope.
and then
So are they
Lily
supposed to
Tomlin
be the
just
same
wants to work.
characters in the show? Are they supposed to be the same characters from the movie?
In the
or
TV show?
Yeah, in the show.
Yes, they're
Okay.
Violet. They're they're all called the same names in the TV show, including the boss is Hart. Yeah,
Yes,
it's Hart.
yes.
However, when they shift over, I don't know exactly when during the series, but at some point they literally start calling the boss is Coleman, as in Dabney Coleman, I think. Apparently they're like, we need a new character. Let's call him Coleman. That'll remind people of the movie.
No continuity needed in the 80s. And you know what? I do appreciate a time and a place where we didn't have to worry about continuity all the time, because Peggy Pope played 6 different characters on Barney Miller. So
well, that was the thing. You just it was like guest stars could be in the same show playing multiple characters,
right.
And they could be on many different shows.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
Just like there were 3 Cagneys on Cagney and Lacey.
And they didn't even, never addressed it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yes.
Listen to our podcast.
You gotta wait.
Yes, you'll learn more about that.
Yeah. So let's bring this episode home. So Sharon, give me your final thoughts on 9 to 5.
Well, as I said before, I, in doing a rewatch, found it to be as entertaining, as fun, as resonant as I did when I first saw it. To my surprise, you just never know with older movies what you're going to get out of it. I just think it's a lot of fun. And yes, there probably are some things that could have maybe some things that I wish that they have done differently. But at the end of the day, I think it does what it intended to do, which was entertain and give you a little bit to think about along the way, especially if you've been unfortunate enough to have a Mr. Hart or Mr. Hart-ish kind of person as a boss in your life. If it were to be, I mean, as we've been talking about possibly sequels or remakes, if it were to be remade again, I hope that they would still make it a comedy. I don't know that I would want to see it as just a straight up drama. But that's just me. I think it's a terrific movie for then and for now, for really just any time. And sadly, even to this day, things are better for women, but we still have a long way to go for a little bit of work equity.
By you, Susan.
Well, I'm going to say that I agree with Sharon that the comedy is just key here. We didn't really talk that this was instrumental, I think, for women in comedy. And those 3 women, the other thing I would say is go on and watch all of their stuff. Now, Dolly Parton follows this movie up with, we didn't get to talk about it, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which is a complete train wreck. But I love that, based on a musical, which I love and have directed. But that's a story for another day. But dive down into Dolly Parton, find out what she's written, find out what she was in. And I think you'll be very surprised at what an incredible talent all of these women are. Lily Tomlin follows up this movie with just an incredible career. I think the top for me is All of Me. And those, like many favorites. And then Jane Fonda, just again, her film career is pretty unprecedented. And I don't think these women get their due. And I don't think this movie gets its due because it's that funny women movie.
That's so Richard. That was a Richardism right there at the end. Invoking the energy of Richard right there. It says funny women movie. I will agree with everything both of y'all have said. And I would go one step further. As someone who identifies as bisexual, I know that if 9 to 5 got made today, Lily Tomlin's character would be gay because Lily Tomlin is gay and she wasn't allowed to be outwardly or open gay. At least in this movie, she wasn't. Though, I mean, she's playing a divorcee, so there's no husband there to have to kind of write around anyways. But if this movie were to be made today, I think it, like you said, Sharon, I think the comedy would be what would sing. I don't know how much drama they would throw into it because, you know, that's a harder thing to do, to make a serious movie funny or a funny movie serious. I mean, either way, it's not going to be easy, but I think it would be a thing worth doing. I think making something more of this, maybe not 9 to 5, but another movie tackling the more contemporary office issues that are still around, that will never go away. And, you don't have to have it with just 3 female characters. It could be, a POC character, a LGBTQ character, and then, I guess you could have a Jane Fonda-esque character who is the audience's eyes and ears. That would be the way to do it now, because you would be able to hit on even more things, even more issues. Actually talking about a diverse workplace, which I'm not saying this movie doesn't talk about that, but that's not the point of this movie. This movie has the diversity quotient is rather low, but that's not the point of this movie. It's more about women writ large. So, I think that would be the way to do it now. But to both of your points, this movie still works today. It has its issues, but most movies do. And to your point, Susan, it's unfortunate that it's just remembered as the funny women movie with that one Dolly Parton song. But hey, if you live near Dollywood, you can go to a theme park that Dolly Parton is actively involved in. So I don't think the movie slowed down their careers, clearly, thankfully. And I'm kind of disappointed myself for it taking this long for me to watch this movie, because I've told Susan this before. I will say it out loud again. The person that I look up to the most, at least in a business setting, is my wife, who is much more professional than I am. And so I know how much this movie paved the way for society to start acting like it should, as opposed to acting in its own self-interest, working in the interest of everyone. So these kinds of movies are important, and they can be entertaining and fun, which also helps the message when it's not just, a snooze fest, because if it was a drama, it probably would have been, just based on what they were talking about, because movies that have come out since that are kind of snooze fests that are so serious. So until the next time I have the two of y'all on, or one of you, or however, Sharon, where could people find you on the internet should they be looking?
You can find me, of course, at the 80s TV Ladies podcast website. And my handle on Twitter is at SJ80TVL.
By you, Susan?
I am at Twitter, at least for now.
There's a caveat worth putting.
At Susan Lambert. Just at Susan Lambert. And you can obviously reach both of us at 80stvladies.com. And 80s TV Ladies is the handle for all of our social media too. And so we get those messages too if you're trying to reach us. And if Twitter goes down, I guess we'll be on Instagram. So
I think you mean when Twitter goes down. The boat is burning right now, and it's heading for the waterfall.
And he's just striking matches.
Yeah, he's like, we got some dynamite, guys.
It's gonna be a fun ride.
Yeah, God,
it's crazy. I think I'm really so I'm going to give my most hopeful prediction, which will never come through, which is he will tank it so much it'll become a complete disaster. No one will want it, and the federal government will step in and give him for some tax relief and a little bit of criminal liability pass. He'll just hand it off to the federal government. It will become the first social media public utility, and will be a use for good and all for free, like a internet library of social media. That's what I want to happen with Twitter.
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about the federal government having all my tweets, though. They already have my cell phone.
No.
I mean,
it would
they already have my cell phone stuff.
It would come with regulation.
Of course,
no, you can't. Libraries don't.
Sure, but they said they can't take your cell phone data without needing it also.
Listen, we need all sorts of digital regulation for sure.
That's true.
That's beyond this thing.
Yeah,
but
maybe they would give everybody
are not allowed to keep basically tell the government what you're checking out of the library. So it's the same kind of thing. We should set it up. It could even be diverse in those, the whatever. All I'm saying is we need a public utility on the internet that is for people, that will be there in a way that is, again, just emergency broadcasting alone. Twitter could become that.
That's fair.
That's where I go. When an earthquake happens, I don't go anywhere but Twitter. If there's some breaking news happening, I go to Twitter. And that's what I'm going to miss. And I'm also going to miss finding diverse voices out there that I would just follow, whether it's from science to accessibility and disability to people of color, or people, scientists of color that I really only found through Twitter, and appreciate being able to follow those voices and hear that point of view. It's been kind of life-changing for me. So I will be very sad, but things change. At the same time, I
fucking hate social media, so I'm okay with it all going away. I'm okay with it all going away. Let Elon burn it down by all means.
I think it's like a lot of things. A little goes a long way. It absolutely has some advantages. It has a whole bunch of disadvantages, but actually, I just created my TV Ladies Twitter handle. I actually had 3 Twitter accounts before that I canceled the day that I heard he was taking over, or that he was going to buy Twitter. I didn't wait for the sale to go through.
You didn't wait for it to actually happen.
Nope. You're like, I'm out. See ya. And I really don't miss it at all. But I thought anyway.
Sharon was one of those protesters who protested the Vietnam War in the mid 60s. Wait until the 70s to protest.
I know that Sharon could not.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I if I could get rid of Twitter, I would, and I probably will. But to Susan's point, good and bad. So you can find me on Twitter if you want, but weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can find this show and 18 additional shows, including, like Susan and Sharon have mentioned, 80s TV Ladies, which you should go check out because you guys are middle of your first season. So, and I know what's coming for the second season, but I'm not going to say anything, but I'm excited. So that's where you can find this show and that show and all the other shows that I work on. And yeah, as for everything else, patreon.com/Kulturecast if you want to, but hey, just listen, rate and review on iTunes where you find this show or wherever you find this show. Just rate and review because that's what helps out the most. Susan, Sharon, thank you both so much for joining me and for saying, hey, why don't you watch a movie you've never seen before?
Thank you, Chris. This has been awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next episode.